And it's partly because there is such an anthropomorphic, human quality to the God of the Bible for me. And we see that really clearly. We see it in God's relationship with Abraham. You know, God says, I'm going to destroy the children of stone. And Abraham says, oh, no, 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 please be patient, be patient. And, you know, there's this relationship of one making the other patient. And there's a lot of confusion about, like, you know, who's the God here and who's not. I find, anyway, in my experience of reading it. And, you know, it's incredibly clear in Exodus, where Moses is coming down with the tablets, where he's about to, and God says, he uses the word, the Erechapayim word, he says to Moses, I'm going to go down and I'm going to destroy the children of Israel. I'm going to let my anger burn against them. Yicharaf. It's let this anger happen. And Moses says, no, 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 no. You know, let me go down, it will be okay. And then Moses goes down and his anger flares up at the children of Israel, the same word, you know, and he throws down the tablets. So while in some ways the patience that's longness of spirit or patience of spirit, in the traditional world we might say, well, God exemplifies that. When I simply go to the God of the Bible, that's not what I get. I do actually find it somewhere else in the Bible, which I'll get to, but I don't find it with this God here. And in a text that we'll look at a little bit, the God of the rabbinic period is really who's pointed to as the one who shows this kind of patience of spirit. So that's interesting. So that was a little bit by way of introduction, going to my text and showing you how this is a sacred text, because, you know, I wanted to talk about patience, and there I go to the Parsha, and there it is, it's right there. And I think actually quite apropos example. So those of you who've been sitting with me know that I have 3 children, and one of my children is a almost 18-year-old son, and that experience in the past year or 2 has been quite a tumultuous experience and has taken me on a great ride of suffering and self-discovery. And actually, when we met last in June or July or whatever it was really sort of the most difficult time for me. And I got very, very sad and very low in my life. In some ways, it was my period of walking through a very, very dark valley. And because I had, and I still have, such a commitment to my practice, I really paid attention to this question of what is going on, both in the, you know, what is the truth of what's unfolding outside, and what is the truth of what's unfolding inside, and how does my mind take what's happening outside and make it worse, or cut off from it, or whatever it is. As a practice instruction, that's very, very, very important to do. So when we are dealing with difficult situations, or when things that are very difficult arise, and what obstructed the children of Israel from hearing this covenantal promise from God was the difficulty of their lives and their shortness of breath, right? So we have to pay attention to what's going on in the framework of our lives, to ask the question, you know, what is going on in your life? And how does that affect the state of your attention? You know, so for me, it's clear that if my children are in a situation that I am concerned about that's unsafe, that may be true or not true, right? My mind may say it's unsafe. It may not, in fact, be true at all. That my capacity to be present might be fine, but the amount of distraction will certainly increase. You know, I can really see that if my anxiety goes up, then I have much more distraction going on. If my heart is settled, if I feel like everybody is safe and, you know, all the ducks are where they're supposed to be, then my capacity to be present and clear is greater. And really the amount of disturbance is less. That's just true for me. That may not be true for you. You know, it varies. I would venture to say that there's somewhat of a gender thing here, you know, perhaps. Perhaps not. I don't think gender is necessarily related to sex. And that's another talk, but anyway. So to really looking at your patterns and see what on the outside affects the inside and how that then affects your ability to hear God's word, to hear the promise, you know, is very, very important. So, let's see. Let me just say that I'm going to work on patience for a little while. Where's my clock? There are two aspects to patience. There is, Sylvia says that we can only practice patience in the face of a visiting stress. That's when we practice patience, in the face of a visiting stress. So, you know, we're sitting on our cushion, something happens to disturb us, a visiting stress, and we practice being patient. We practice staying present, being in the moment, or we're in our life. And there is a very real stress, you know. Somebody in your family gets ill, you know, or anything, whatever it is. We practice patience. And then there's this question of patience of spirit. And I think they're related. I think that as we practice patience in our life and we cultivate an awareness of how that works, then we can develop a patience of spirit, which is perhaps what can deeply root us, can really ground our practice. So, you know, one of the great things in my life is that I get to live with Jeff. It's a great blessing. And one of the great things is that he's a great support to my practice. And he's really a great support in me having to do these talks, which I would blame on him. I'm sort of like Norman. I'm not going to blame it on Alan, but I'll blame it on him. And so I say to Jeff, oh, you know, I need something Jewish on this, and I can't really find it in any of my books. And, you know, it's not where it's supposed to be. What I do is he goes to the computer and he Googles and finds me all these great things. Mm-hmm. It's so great because I don't do that. That's what I rely on him for. So I said, patience. I need something on patience. So he gave me this thing. And it's so funny because you can get all these different things, right? You don't know where they come from. This is an article by Rabbi Wein. I don't know who Rabbi Wein is. And it was in the Jerusalem Post. And it's actually a very interesting article. And you can't really tell what denomination he's from or anything. I mean, it's a political article, so you get a little bit of a sense of his critique of the Israeli government and their ability to practice erech hapayim, or patience of spirit. But more than that, you don't know. So anyway, he says, patience is not really a Jewish virtue. And his proof text for that is a rabbinic debate in which a non-Jew is debating with a rabbi and says that we are an am pizizah, we are a rash and impetuous people.